Hello everybody, DMGeezerjim here, working on another module in my classic module review series, kind of capping out the Giants thing, at least for first and second edition. Maybe I'll take a look at Storm King's Thunder whenever I get through this monstrous library I have over to 5th edition. But yeah, second edition Silver Anniversary Against the Giants, released by TSR in 1999, one of the last TSR releases prior to the Wizards takeover. But first and foremost, before we go too far into it, this is a tale of two modules, or four modules maybe. It includes your original Against the Giants, Steadying the Hill Giant Chief, Glacial Rift of the Frost Giant, Hall of the Fire Giant King, in case those weren't, the original G1 through 3 weren't enough for you. But the one thing that I can say that I like about this one, yeah, we're just going to jump right into this sucker. You get some designer notes. The Sean Reynolds, Ratliff, the guys that were responsible for editing it, talk about their play experiences as well as their intent in updating it. So it's nice. You get some authored notes that, this is rule as written versus rule as intended type of thing. Advice from the guy that wrote it, advice from the guys that have run it and that have edited the module as far as things to keep in mind. Using the classics with the new material, first and foremost, the Against the Giants, the Liberation of Jeff. I can't say Jeff. I feel so dumb saying it, but it is what it is. Jeff. Liberation of Jeff, right? Whoever he is, we're going to liberate his lands, the lands of Jeff. Duchy of Jeff is what we're referring to. This is set in Greyhawk. Actually, I guess would say western, southwestern, farthest western region of Keoland, right into the Crystal Mist Mountains where they wrap up into the Barrier Peaks. So, first and foremost, there's a little bit of information that provides us to include the original modules as part of this newer campaign. Not required information should you choose to include them. Nothing in the Liberation of Joff is going to require their original G1 through 3, but there are tools given for us to incorporate them. So if you're looking to play the classics in a more cohesive format, this is a great module. If you want to play with Giants, but you don't want to use the old ones because they're done to death, this is a great module. Let me reemphasize that. This is a very good source book. I think it's presented as an adventure. It's presented as a module. Let me rephrase that. It is an adventure and it's a module, but its presentation mirrors more of a source book than it does an actual adventure. The majority of the main body of the information that's given as far as maps, locations, NPCs, combat tables, and all that are actually given in alphabetical order of location in the format of a gazetteer. So yeah, right out the gate, I'm gonna have to look at the camera in the eye and say this is a very labor-intensive book to use. You'll definitely have to keep your own notes. You'll definitely have to organize your own thoughts on the side and use the module as a reference book. Unfortunately, the way the module is laid out doesn't support page-by-page play as well as some of the other books do. Certainly not according to 5th edition standards. To use this book effectively in a full campaign format is to, well, shit, let's just get on down to it. Product review time. We'll start with the product itself. We get some new rules for Giants. It talks about how do we use Giants in combat. So this is upgunning weapon use. Back in the first edition, a Giant used a club or threw a rock or punched you. Numbers and rules and adjustments were given in the original G1 through 3 to say, treat this guy as hitting as a storm giant with this axe. This guy hits as a fire. So it's like, go refer to this to hit him with that. Things are a lot more simplified now. It gives you a simple modifier system to use based on your Giants. Back in the old days, Giant healing was very bad. So a war of attrition was the way to go. A Giant would not heal as quickly as a player character would over the course of a long rest. So the proportional healing was upgraded for the second edition presentation to make sure that to make the Giants a little more stronger. 5th edition, healing is healing. You walk away from 10 unhealed Giants, you come back tomorrow, they're fully healed just like you are. So that's one plus side about it. Female Giants are their behavior, their attributes is listed as well. They're now considered part of the combat tables in addition to having reduced hit points, behavior and dress and appearance and all of that is listed here as well. This is really the first canonical appearance of cloud giants in numbers, likewise with storm giants. So there's some information given on how to use and when to use your cloud giants in combat, when to use their fog abilities, when to use their levitation abilities. Again, you'll have to upgrade and change for 5th edition, but the description of the tactics will transcend any edition. The more information we have on how giants think and fight and do, the better, right? So it's not going to hurt you. So then we get a little bit more into what's gone before. So this is in reference to the plot. This is nothing the player. This is none of this the players are really aware of. But this is setting up the information for me as the player to, the DM, excuse me. This is why everything is happening. It's talking about, just to summarize it, a group of cloud giants have been off touring the southern regions and have come back. And typically cloud giants are the top of the food chain for giants. Think of the ordning. If you're a Storm King's Thunder from the 5th edition, this is the same theory. I would very much argue that the ideas behind Storm King's Thunder, although it did it much better, the ordning is still the same basic concept. There's a structure of a giant hierarchy that's in place, and the cloud giants are at the top of it. So the cloud giants come back around, and the idea is this is set after the G1 through 3 series. The giants of the hill giants, frost giants, fire giants got really big, bad piles of money. Heroes showed up, kicked their butts. The Socket, which is the tribe and the leader of this cloud giant group, they float around in multiple floating castles, named his tribe after himself. So he shows up in 585 CY timeline for the region and decides, hey man, I'm going to finish what these giants started, and proceeds to lead an organized movement of giants, providing reinforcements to the giant forces, the occasional show of force from the cloud above. As long as the giants kept giving, all the ground giants kept giving the cloud giants food and gold and all that, everyone is happy. So that's really the overriding plot. That's the scenario in the situation that's been put in place by the book. And now at this point, your party has to decide, or let me rephrase that. This is the living world aspect of it. This is what's happening in this region. I think I could pull up a map real quick, and just so we're not talking what region you talk about. If I have access to the map, I should show you. Sorry, it takes just a brief second to load up here. The lands of Sulf are what they're now called, the Grand Duchy of Jeff. The Stag's Crown, Pest's Crossing, Grassmere, Hornwood, Clear Sky, all of these regions are part of, you see Fort Nurrock, Castle Azeel, Castle Thunderhead, all of this region over here. This is the region of the world of Greyhawk that the module is written and set in. I would bet it probably takes about, where's the Valley of the Mages? Right about here. So it takes up most of this region here on the far west side of the duchy, a little bit away from the Kingdom of Keelan. So it's genuinely, the module proper, the adventure proper, is designed as a reclaim. We're going to reclaim the lands. The name of the module is literal and accurate for the goals of the adventure of the campaign. We want to liberate the Duchy of Joff from the control of the giants. So all the book and the module proper does is gives us, first and foremost, slightly updated versions of the original 3 modules. Kind of an ode to, a tip of the hat to, very much accurate to the first edition publications. If you already have the first ones, not a ton of stuff going on here for you. A little bit more information on how to tie them into the duchy around you, but outside of that, it's not a big deal. Faithful recreations for the 25th anniversary of the product. Sorry. So, yeah, we're kind of thumbing through, just looking at it. There's really nothing here that you need for part 2, which is the liberation. So the liberation is where things get a little bit wonky for us, because as I was saying a second ago, here's first we get the map 8, the region of Joff. This is the region that is being reflected, that we kind of zoomed in out on this map here, as far as the towns and all this kind of stuff there. So your second edition book is going to give you a map that's going to detail some of the towns, Hawkhawk, Gorna, Pregmere. Let's find Gorna is here. Hotch, Pregmere is here. All the way up to here. Yeah, so pretty good map. Find your map, whichever map you want to use. Like I said, this is Anna B. Meyer. Credit all the credit and love to her, cartographer for Greyhawk stuff. This is exclusively what I use for my world mapping, or for viewing the world. But anyway, and then it breaks it down alphabetically. Clan Azil, who are they? Where are they at? What's their castle like? Durelion, the Elven Forest and the Planar Gate that has some stuff going on there. The Maze of Plants. Gorna, history, current status. The town of Holkov, the Gnomes of the Stark Mounds, Hornwood. So it's laid out as a gazetteer. This is one of my complaints about the module. While it's a lot of good information, it's not intuitive in the least. In the essence that you're going to be flipping back and forth a lot if you're using this book by book. The main regional map they give you, in my opinion, is not sufficient to really run this adventure well. You're going to have to do a lot of extra mapping, or you're going to have to go outside, which, go outside. Shit, this is a better map anyway. But adapt the adventure slightly to the map of your choice, or plan on getting a little bit more of a detailed map built into this, because it's right there where the Crystal Mists meet the Barrier Peaks with the Hornwood, all that. It's a pretty busy area, and it's pretty well defined in a lot of the Greyhawk lore. First edition, second edition, Out of the Ashes, third edition, Living Greyhawk Gazetteer. There's a lot of information available for the region. This is getting very specific to locations, okay? So yeah, deciding which of these your players are going to visit is part of the, I guess, I can't say, come on, kitty, move. I love you, bro, but you're right up in my way, man. Is part of the challenge is planning your campaign, because this is definitely set up based on the gazetteer layout of the adventure, and the fact that the plot and the whole idea of everything was summarized very early on. Your players will experience this area in a sandbox sort of a way. Again, this is definitely not a point A, B, C, D, E, F linear campaign. The whole idea is that these heroes are one of many who have come into the region to help liberate the Duchy of Jeff from all these bad giants. So they're going to approach it from different points of view. They might start in the north, they might start in the south. There's no defining factor given, which either A, you can force that on them, you can just direct them to the first town and control their movement. Nothing's stopping you from doing that. And then you prepare how you want to prepare for that. Or B, you allow them the agency to understand it's the tail end of a battlefield. They're coming back in for round 2 of a losing war. The round 2 of the war, and they're fighting for the losing side, trying to make some ground on the gain. So how they approach it tactically can certainly be up to them. But yeah, on through this, the main section of this book is just a gazetteer style layout. It's going to give you some of the maps of the towns, locations within some of the towns, non-player characters, general ideas and behavior. A lot of information. A lot of information is given for it. A lot of good detailed information. It's just kind of scattered alphabetically by location in the gazetteer rather than importance or any sort of plot. First go here, then go there, then go here. So yes, that's why I say this is prep heavy. You've got to plan on doing a lot of spend a lot of time planning the areas out. Secondly, now I have to tip my hat to the guys that did the liberation of Jeff. I feel like freaking Naja. I cannot say Jeff. But what I want to point out, let me go to single page and zoom in really well. Downside is obviously the quality of the book, the age of the book. You're going to do your own mapping. Pay attention to your scale, because lo and behold, we have giant size fortifications. 1 square for Clan Azale's castle it's a crappy castle. It's just stone giants that don't even like living in castles built a fortress to collect revenue for the cloud giants. But it's big, 25 foot. 1 square equals 25 foot. The smallest structure is 50 foot by 30 foot across. That's your average sized room in your Hill Giant fortress, from studying in the Hill Giants. So it's almost like the 25th anniversary paid attention to me in the past, or did a better job of understanding the basics of combat and gave us much larger scale. 1 square equals 25 foot. So now all of a sudden we're dealing with spaces and maps that the giants can actually. Oops, sorry. That our giants can actually maneuver and be giants in. So the good side of the liberation of Joff is that we have an adaptation of the size of the maps to fit the combatants. Our giants are no longer in constant disadvantage because of the size of their area. They're fighting an area that favors them. So challenge, you get to make maps. You got to make some more maps, or if you're theater of the mind, you got to worry about it. Just pay attention to scale. Even Mount Rungerheim, kind of this version of the fire giant fort. 1 square equals 25 feet. So you're sitting at 15 to 20 feet on your average passage, sometimes larger. They're still a little skinny. You can tell most of them are trying to be 10-footers, but it is what it is. So yeah, the mapping is gridded out 25 feet larger, giving us space for giants. The scale, there is no scale given on most of our towns. That's one thing that you need to keep in mind. You have a little bit of artistic freedom. I would kind of err to the side of making a lot of them smaller. Whatever you need to do, whatever you want to do to fit, but understand that the towns are not drawn in sort of scale. It's more of an abstract, if you will. But the towns are detailed, and here we go. Castle Thrasmontier is 1 square equals 25. This is a pretty good sized castle. 50-foot wide opening, man. That means some giants are on duty here, right? Kind of on, like I said, we're just thumbing at this point, getting through here. The dungeon level of the castle. Again, nice and big. 1 square equals 25 foot. On and on. Some okay art. Pregmere, the town, is listed. Information given about the ruins of it. If filling out some of that. Not every town is mapped. That's one thing that I do kind of notice. Most of the significant ones is something where there's a non-player character, a group of giants, a group of rebels, whatever. If they matter in the adventure, they're certainly mapped out. But if they don't, then yeah, they're kind of left up to you. West Town isn't, is a smaller. If you look at the map, that place has been tore up. On. Great resource. The book is a good resource, and then we get to the Cloud Islands of the Socket. When the party finally has figured out what's going on as they've made their way through the remainder of this area, reclaiming villages, reclaiming the small towns, fighting off the giants, fighting a fort here and there, they're going to ultimately learn about the frost giants. Not frost giants, excuse me. The cloud giants that are responsible for all of this. So they'll make their way up to the clouds, fighting cloud giants bridge by bridge, individuality, and forcing a final showdown between them and Socket himself. If the characters are able to kill or drive off all of the adult Socket, all of the cloud giants, or convince them to redirect their attention to another part of the world, that's considered winning. And man, that's really it. Like I said, there's not a ton to go through here as far as the adventure goes. So, like I said, well, there is, but it's not. It's hard to find. Prep heavy. So let's, we're almost all the way through. I do really appreciate the end of it. Again, it's not going to mean anything to us because we're 5th edition players. But man, you've got a nice big roster, compiled monster stats. If you're good at quick conversions in your head, you have every stat block that you need to run this adventure in one source. Great source book. And there's a lot of monsters, man. Yeti, zombie, wyvern, woodsman, winter wolves, white pudding, white dragons, weir rats, water weirds, a wall of tentacles, verbeegs, trolls, troglodytes, a titan. Yeah, there is a titan in the fire giant king. I forgot about that. Sylvan elves, subterranean lizards, storm giants, stone giants, snow serpents, snow leopards, shadow giants, slow shadows, hill giant and ogre shadows. Shadow Dragon. I forgot about the Shadow Dragon. Remores. Salamander. On and on. It's quite the bestiary. So, if somehow, and I'm not going to say somehow, somehow is now. So let's put this all together now. We have G1, G2, G3 in this as a source book. We've already done our reviews on that. I don't need to spend any time talking about those specifics. Spent enough time talking about that. We've gone through the liberation of Joff as far as the layout of the book, talking about all the locations. We understand the pure basics are that the cloud giants have showed up, enforcing a new order on the remaining giant forces, and your players need to stop them. It's not a huge plot. It's not a big, bad, nasty, convoluted thing. It's going to be combat heavy. There's not going to be a ton of room for role play. So from a planning point of view, from a campaign point of view, the first things, a couple things I'm going to ask myself as I sit here and go, okay, I can start this out about a 5th level campaign for 5th edition purposes, starting them out alongside some of the refugees from Jeff as they make their way back west, fighting off the smaller forces of the giants. Okay, so if I start with that as my reasoning, and let me go ahead and pop over to world map real quick. Apologies. If we're starting with that as our concept, and I'm going to start, we'll say Pregmere, because Pregmere was one of the towns that was listed here. What page was Pregmere on? 77. Let's go to 77. And let's see what's listed, what's going on in Pregmere. So this is how I got to start putting stuff together real quick here, okay? I've got to look the history and current status. Pregmere gets its name from the dozens of hot springs that mark the center of the city. Each spring is shallow and no more than 20 feet across, formed by a probably magical heat source within the earth that drives groundwater. The city's unusual layout, see map 18, you can see all the little hot springs alongside of the road. Was very good at attracting the attention of those passing by, but inefficient for defense. The town was hard to defend, so after the red-headed fire giants, who like the hot springs because it reminded them of home, decided to take the town over. They've established themselves. The hill giants tried to leave, but the fire giants wouldn't let them go, and the fire giants are keeping all the hill giants here as labor and troops. Now Pregmere grows crops and raises animals for food for many of the followers of the socket of the cloud giants. The enslaved hill giants are used as draft animals, allowing the farmers to plow huge tracts of land and resulting in phenomenal crop yields. This allows more animals to be well fed, which means more healthy animals and more surviving offspring. Oddly enough, Pregmere produces more food now as a slave city than it ever did when it was free. The people worked hard, but all eat well and still have plenty to give when it's time for the giants to collect their shares of wheat, oat, and livestock. They're scattered members of a resistant movement working to free the 300 or so town people from the giants. Though it's difficult because any humans not in leg irons immediately stands out, so it's pretty obvious to anyone if you're resistance or not, unless you're going to put yourself in leg irons running around. Have some mechanical fun with that. The difficulty, movement, no dexterity, so on and so forth. But possible. Absolutely possible. Might be a fun thing for your players to try to have to act like they prisoners in leg irons and quick drop and quick on. An artificer could have some fun with that. Role play dynamics, mechanic dynamics that you can really lean into with something as small as that. So leader of the resistance is trying to get the government, trying to get the giants out, as is the goal. Free the people first, come back, chase the giants out later. So that's the situation, and this is just a brief sampling of how each of these sites and locations as part of the map are set up and presented. So this town of Pregmere here, that's the information we're getting from here. The fire giants of this city come from a more southern region of the Crystal Mints than King Mograthir's tribe, but they respect his strength and enjoy his ruling over the humans. The leader of the giants is the younger brother of the chief of his tribe, so he's kind of down the rung a little bit, not super important. Runs the town in typical fire giant fashion, like a military camp. Has 10 fire giants serving under him. Every 3 months, another group of 5 arrives, and then 5 are allowed to rotate out. So there's very rarely any time that there's more than 11 fire giants. There might be 16 at one point in time. That's what that's telling me as a dungeon master. Why is all that? If you need your party to be easier, 5 of the, we're at the tail end of their shift. And these guys are tired and bored and ready to go. And here in a week, the reinforcements will get in, so the giants may not be on edge. If you need to challenge your party, the reinforcements have to show up the day before your party did. Now there's 16 fire giants hanging out. That's the option that you're getting. So there's laws, which means your party could possibly move through the town, unless there are a dwarf, elf, or gnome, in which case they're to be slain on sight. So Attempting to escape is punishable by hard labor until death. Those not meeting the requirement minimum harvest standards will be put on double work details for 1 month. Striking a fire giant is punishable by execution. Spellcasting by any human is punishable by execution. Carrying a weapon other than a work tool is punishable by execution. So, for infiltration purposes and working through the town, I'm instantly given the expectations of how the players are going to be treated depending on what they look like, what they're doing while in town. And then you get the town proper. It gives you quick, brief descriptions of all the locations within town, the Hill Giant prisons, the barracks, the slave barracks, the hot springs. Not a bunch. There's a lot of prisons, a lot of barracks. That's it. Excuse me. Now, the prisons hold hill giants, not players. The players are kept in the slave barracks. So if your party's trying to bust everyone out, there you go. If your party's visiting the town, there you go. How do we use that for an adventure? Well, number one, we know that there's a lot of food being produced right here. Depending on your timeline, there might be a hell of a lot of hungry people out here, so Pregmere might be the first target for an offense. Get in there, scout it out. Oh, dude, there's only 15 fire giants. So then you got to decide at that point, if you're playing level 5 entry point, maybe some army units move in, a large formation of guys come in from Hotch. The fire giants retreat, and the party fights a couple hill giants that they can handle as they're freeing the prisoners. Simple way to incorporate Pregmere into the early part of a campaign. If it's later in the campaign and your party comes to free Pregmere, make sure the 15 giants are there, not the 10. And the town's a little bit more patrolled. A couple of hellhounds, have fun with, maybe a pack of gnolls has come into the service for being well fed as well. So you've got a few more forces to add into it. So yeah, there's 15 hill giants, 11 to 16 fire giants, and about 300 civilians that are stored within this town. And that's it. So what we get with that example is an example of every other location that's given to us in the map. Possibly a map of a town, a description of what's going on there, what used to be there, and what's, and who's living there now. And then it's just a sandbox for us to decide, for our players to decide what they're going to do with, and for us to have to tie things in. So we're going to start with Pregmere just because I said I would. Over the course of Pregmere, I also need to include the 3 major fire giant, or the hill giant location, the fire giant location, the frost giant location, as well as a couple other castles, and like, for example, Clan Azil's castle. That can be, is it actually on this? Castle Azil is right here, way up in the hills. So that's so far out of the way that your party's probably not going to find that till later. But these posts here, Castle Thunderhead, Myris, Azil, Tagir, if your party is following the giants over the course of the campaign, one thing I do want to take a pause real quick, not so much a personal pause, but Against the Giants, the Liberation of Jeff is designed to be a campaign that takes place over months of real time. It's a living world active battlefield. If your party is busy over here in Pregmere, the Giants might be busy down here in Gorna. If your party comes into Waitmeat early on and establishes a presence, then the opposite is happening in Pregmere. They can't be everywhere all at once. So depending on where your party starts their things, depending on where your party begins their encounter, other things are happening simultaneously. So yeah, you've got to be kind of somewhat mentally prepared to manage an active battlefield, if you will, consisting of the forces of the little folk versus the forces of the giants. And overriding all of that is a cloud, a group of cloud giants, the Sarkut, that are running everything. So yeah, you've got the Stone Reaver clan, a bunch of dwarves are defending their homes over here in Morathan. That's not included as part of this module. Something else to keep in mind. Not far away, you have the Valley of the Mage. If things go sideways, why are we not talking about that? There's a lot of stuff right in this area. So make sure as you're setting up the planning phase for your campaign that you're allowing for your understanding that the design is going to take months of game time. Not necessarily, which depending on how quickly you play, it could be even longer in real life time, obviously. But Yeah, so they can't be everywhere at once. As things progress, they progress. But wherever they approach, whether they come in through Pregmere, Oitmeat, Durzinth, the first thing we want to do is establish the Hill Giant Fort, because that's the first step, if you will, of the campaign from the original G1 through 3 series. We're going to use Durzinth or Pregmere to establish the occupational forces of the giants. They'll find a map there, they'll find a clue there, they'll find something there that directs them to the steading of the Hill Giant Chief. At that point, I would honestly consider putting that over here somewhere, like in this hex near the rivers, near a hill, remote enough to where it's not like in your face, easily assaultable, but close enough to this major branch of roads to where they still have a bearing. So this is where steadying the Hill Giant Chief would be placed for me. And I would, again, we talked about the difference between 5th edition and 1st edition, giant count, all that. Personally, I say upscale it. 1 square equals 10 feet is drawn. Maybe double the size of it so you have room for it. So we've established the Hill Giant Fortress right here under the Y in here. So that way where there are parties in Durzinth, Pregmere, or Oitmeat, this is their first stop on their way in, or their second stop. Their first point was one of these 3 towns where we established the presence of the giants. There they get a clue that drives them further west or south or north, whatever, towards the middle of the map. Plop down the Hill Giant Fortress here. Hill Giant Fortress is going to give them the clue that the Frost Giants are connected in some way, shape, or form. So now that they're here, they continue pushing west into the regional map. Let me see if I can do a double screen here real quick. Yeah. Yay. One smarter, not harder. Sorry. Let me get to the right part of the map. That'll help too, right? So once they've faced off with the Hill Giants in this middle ground, and they've played G1, steadying the Hill Giant right here in this area, they're going to continue going further west, which will probably lead them to, is Durasmith? I don't think Durasmith was given. Drellion is given, and where's Drellion? That's... Wait, I want to say it's down here somewhere. Or is that one of the new ones? As I slowly scan around the map, let's see where it was on the main OG map. Because they do tell you there's a few villages that are given but not detailed. Drellion is in the Dim Forest, which is considered the Hornwood now. Way up here, yeah. Man, so we're talking about a lot of territory here. Drellion. Now, the plus side is where it's at on the side of the fortress, and if you really look at it, it makes sense when we zoom in on the big map. Because you've got all these gray things. On the old Greyhawk map, the gray one denotes some sort of ruined area. So the giants have been crashing out of this region into the Elflands of the Dim Forest. So what's going on in Drellion? If you have elves, this is your starting point. If you want to start a little bit higher level, Map 10 is an elven town founded hundreds of years ago. They were not caught unaware by the giant invasion. As a matter of fact, Drellion is actually a really cool site, now that I'm remembering it. Shadow Dragon Hell. Advanced parties were sent out to harry the invaders with arrows while the town prepared defensive works. A wizard named Fafel was in town trying to get some time with the local ruler's daughter. We always know how that always turns out poorly for an over-ambitious show-off wizard, don't we? But in this case, he tried to cast a summon shadow spell. Instead of calling forth 4 shadows, he summoned a shadow dragon that happened to be passing through the equivalent spot on the plane of shadow. So a enraged shadow dragon freed herself and went on a rampage, and that's what we have basically left over in the town of Drellion. So I don't know that I would have Darelion, however you want to pronounce it, featuring early in the campaign because you're fighting a shadow dragon. The spell portal's been damaged. There's lots of shadows. There's lots of crazy stuff. The slow shadows, the remains of ogres and giants and other things that that fell to the shadow dragon are all that remain here. and obviously the Dragon's Horde. So Darelian is just a dragon lair. It's just a weird, crazy-ass shadow dragon lair. So that's a fun location to add into your campaign. Has very little to do with the campaign. So yeah, that's the thing, man. You're going to have to read location by location, deciding which ones are going to suit your campaign and deciding how much of the travel and how much of the in-between that you're going to be prepared to lay in. So we've established the Hill Giants here. I would probably push the campaign south towards Gorna so they could deal with the Stark Mounds, the gnomes of the Stark Mounds, and ultimately the Frost Giants could be hidden in one of the glaciers here, which would then direct them back towards the barrier peaks for the Fire Giants. Along the way, we have all of the smaller little towns of Kagria Forts, the Leah, things like that. So using against the Giants the Liberation of Jeff is simply canonizing and codifying a campaign that accompanies the G1 through 3. That's one way to look at it. With a final summation, the big thing is you're removing the Dark Elves as the overriding factor, because the Cloud Giants have showed up, from their travels and reorganized the ordning, if you will, put things into place, and all the giants are conquering lands and giving the Cloud Giants their offerings. So you're substituting the Cloud Giants in for the Dark Elves. You're removing, maybe not completely removing, but you're minimizing the link between Loth, the Dark Elves, and the Giants. So we're going G1 through 3 as the entire campaign, structured around the region provided with the Liberation of Jeff. Now, transporting this to another realm. I'm going to kind of close out these last few minutes with that. I don't know that it's worth the work. Unless you simply want to change names on the towns, then it could be a great thing. Unless you have a map that matches up with this. You're using your own campaign world that lines up with perfectly with the names. You can, I don't know, you can take all the information, rebuild it into your own list of towns on your own map and do just fine with it, and actually, adapt it reasonably well into your own homebrew environment. The reason I say that, because it's limited into this smaller area. Oh, not that small area. Sorry, bad zoom in. This region of one part of the world is what it's dedicated to. So there's certainly nothing preventing us from adapting either a section of our world to match this, or crossing out names, typing in new names, and adapting this to our current world. Pretty adaptable. Even the original Hill Giant, Frost Giant, Fire Giant, G1 through 3 were given suggestions, but they were not canonically placed in a single location or hex anywhere in the original Greyhawk. The publication of those modules predated the publication of the Greyhawk as a setting. So as far as its mapping goes, so you certainly, and we certainly, have the freedom and the flexibility to place these as we need within our world. So yeah, just to kind of close things out here. Against the Giants, Liberation of Jeff is the 25th anniversary revision update of the classic, basically building a campaign world, a small section of the world, rebuilding it to support the placement and the existence of the Hall of the setting of the Hill Giant, the Glacial Rifts of the Frost Giant, and the Hall of the Fire Giant, while adding a different antagonist in the form of Cloud Giants. The book in and of itself is a reproduction and a reprint of G1 through 3. Slight upgrades for second edition stats, but that's really about it. And then a pretty well constructed source book providing information for all of the regions, for the region of the Duchy of Jeff, the region around these locations, giving us additional creatures, different encounters, loot tables, non-player characters, all of this stuff, just fleshing this region out a little bit more, making it a little bit more playable, a little bit more entertaining, and easier to keep these 3 large giant complexes in play while supporting a story. Okay? So think about it that way. Definitely a challenge to use page by page. Using this book is going to require some advanced preparation, setting up your own maps. Plus side is the maps are all scaled at 25 feet. Downside is that means you got to draw your own maps. To be fair, the maps that were presented in the book are more for reference. None of them are actually play maps. Ironically, the old maps are still listed at 10 feet. Grumble, grumble, gurgle, roar. Is what it is. So, yeah, man. A good product. A good addition. If you've ever been sat there wondering if I could use the Giants, how do I turn them into a campaign without magically waving my hands to get them from point A to point B? How do I involve them in this campaign? The Silver Anniversary release of Against the Giants gives you much better structure, much better story, and an active environment and world to put the 3 locations in to drive the story forward. So I would definitely suggest adding this in with the caveat that it is Greyhawk centered. All of the locations, all the towns, all the names, all of that are set in the world of Greyhawk. If you're doing a homebrew, you're probably going to go ahead and plan on editing out some of those names. Likewise, with Forgotten Realms, if you're doing Forgotten Realms, go do Storm King's Thunder. And I'll talk about that when we get to 5th edition. Very similar story. A couple of little twists that cause some variations in it, but overall the story is very, very similar. So you're not missing anything if you play Storm King's Thunder. If you're older edition, you don't want to play Storm King's Thunder, you're not missing anything. They copied 90% of what we're playing with against the Giants. It's okay. The 2 products can certainly work together in a roundabout way. No, they really can't. The geography, the settings of themselves. The products are so similar, but the settings, the adherence to the settings do cause some crossover issues with it. But hey, like I said, they're so similar in plot that pick the one that lines with your setting. But you know what, guys? Above all else, thank you so much. Against the Giants, Liberation of Jeff. We're finished with this review for now. Likes, follows, subscribes, comments, questions, anything like that. Like I said, our main focus was just, there's not a ton to review in here. More talking about how we can use this to incorporate existing locations into a larger picture. Starting out with our hooks being, they can be tried and true, in this case, warfare. We want to reclaim the land for the refugees that these giants have overrun and been eating and pillaging to war. And there you go. So you have a selection of towns, a selection of locations that your party works their way through as they discover the next clue that leads them to the steading of the hill giant. They kill all the hill giants, and they find out that as they work farther that the frost giants are a bigger threat. Clear 1 or 2 more towns out, burn down a giant fort, and they'll go kick some frost giant booty. Come back down out the mountains, cool off a little bit, or warm up after being frozen a little bit. Find out that the remaining giants are massing in 1 or 2 things, but there's cloud giants up there now. Okay, well, the cloud giant emissary is sitting over at the fire giant fort. Let's go pop them suckers, get that cloud giant emissary. Now we've got a ride to get up to the cloud giant castle. Finally up there, whether we negotiate a settlement or kill cloud giants, everyone lives happily ever after. So it's not hard to assemble. All the tools are there, but it's big. Even though I just, gave you the summation of the plot, how to move from point A to point B to point C in 45 seconds, it's a campaign that will take months of in-game time to travel and traverse and to have the long rest and the short rest and the multiple expeditions into these forts. So make no understanding, it is a campaign-length adventure. But hey, thank you for your times. Likes, follows, subscribes, all that stuff is appreciated. Hit me up over on Twitch if you want to jump in for a live conversation, 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. Central Standard Time. You can find the bios down on here. But yes, like, follow, subscribe, share with your friends, and we'll be back for more reviews soon. Be safe.